Systemic verbal and emotional abuse and sexual misconduct as a result of a culture that normalizes inappropriate and harmful behavior. That's the damning result of an investigation into practices in the United States Professional Women's Soccer League. The scene is reeling and reactions have been swift. The governing body, U.S. Soccer, has promised wide-reaching changes. The owners of two clubs have removed themselves from any decision-making processes, and one club has fired two executives, but that has done little to comfort players. Here's U.S. defender Becky Sauerbrunn.
The players are not doing well. We are horrified and heartbroken and frustrated and exhausted and really, really angry. We are angry that it took a third-party investigation. We are angry that it took an article in The Athletic and The Washington Post and numerous others. We're angry that it took over 200 people sharing their trauma to get to this point right now. And I think for so long, this has always fallen on the player to demand change. And that is because the people in authority and decision-making positions have repeatedly failed to protect us, and they have failed to hold themselves and each other accountable.
For more, let's bring in two journalists who have covered this story extensively. Meredith Cash, senior sports reporter for Business Insider in New York City, and Mollie Cahillane, senior TV reporter for Adweek and host of the podcast Most Powerful Women in Sports. Welcome to you both. And I do want to start with you, Meredith. The allegations had been floating around for quite some time. What did this report now reveal that wasn't already known?
I think the biggest thing is the depth of the understanding of the abuse and the negligence that allowed it to go on for as long as it happened. Another big major component of this that was unknown previously was the entire situation that happened at Racing Louisville FC with head coach Christy Hawley. We knew previously that he was terminated rather abruptly and that it was connected to allegations of misconduct. But the story with his player and, for anyone who read the investigation, the opening anecdote regarding an incident that happened one-on-one with a player during a film room viewing, none of that was known prior to this report. So all of that was rather staggering. And I think more than anything, the depth of knowledge of all of this was alarming for everyone.
Yeah. Mollie, the fallout has been huge. Heads started rolling as soon as the report came out, but that's not going to solve the problem, is it?
I wish it did, but it's not. It needs more than that. There was tremendous reporting that Meg Linehan and Molly Hensley-Clancy did last year that really got the Yates investigation started. Back then, you saw 5 of the 10 coaches were out of the league by the end of the year. But then you have a year later, the Yates report comes out, and there's more we don't even know. So getting rid of a few people in the report isn't going to solve the problem at its core, which is a league in which misconduct has been systemic across coaches, players, leagues. It needs a complete overhaul.
How can it be tackled, though, Meredith? Where to start? This is a web of abuse, condemnation, complicity, and fear. Where do you start to overhaul that and rebuild the structure basically from scratch?
I think the biggest issue that was laid out pretty well in an E60 report that aired the night after Sally Yates's report was released was, the fundamental issues at the core of this that allowed such misconduct to proliferate. And that's the fact that there's insecurity within women's professional soccer at large, and there has been since its founding. Before the National Women's Soccer League came to be in 2013, there were 2 previous leagues, both of which folded after 3 years. And so by the time you get to the NWSL, players who are there are just feeling grateful to have a position to play professional soccer. And so they tolerated behavior and facilities and compensation that was just substandard as a result. No one wanted to be the whistleblower who brought the entire league down. And so they put up with things that they shouldn't have. And so I think part of the project that is rebuilding the NWSL that's already underway for what it's worth since these initial allegations came to light late last year, is to build a stronger structurally sound league that doesn't have these loopholes, that allows players to feel confident in speaking their truth and demanding what they're worth.
Mollie, you have looked into the response of the NWSL sponsors to the report, and they seem to be struggling, to say the least, to find an appropriate way to react, don't they?
Struggling is to put it a little lightly, but to be fair, they were probably pretty blindsided, just as a lot of us were that hadn't seen the report and didn't fully know the extent. But my colleague Jason Naughty and I spent pretty much 48 hours straight after the report came out, reaching out to sponsors across the league, and specific teams as well, specifically teams like the Red Stars, the Portland Thorns, Racing Louisville, teams that were really named in the report. So we reached out to 19, we heard back from 10. Since then, a couple more have released statements, but it's been a lot of corporate jargon, a lot of deeply disturbed, which I'm sure they are, as we all are. But I think what a lot of these brands and sponsors either don't want to realize or just haven't realized is the power, a lot of the power lies within them too. It's been a lot of, we need to see what the NWSL does. We're hoping for change. So we all are. But if these brands want to continue sponsoring the NWSL, and I hope they do, because I don't want the league to fold. Nobody wants the league to fold, and you need sponsors. They need to use their power as sponsors and their spending power to try and force the NWSL into change. And for what it's worth, I really do believe U.S. Soccer and the NWSL are committed to meaningful change and have already started making those steps. But one sponsor reaction that really did stand out to me was Ally Financial. They're a nationwide sponsor. They're the league kit sponsor, or sleeve sponsor. So their CMO, Andrea Brimmer, is calling for meaningful change to find the truth, no matter how painful. And I'd like to see more brands react like that.
How have the teams reacted? Because this investigation was focused on 3 teams in particular. Meredith, did one of these teams stick out with a particularly good response in your view?
Honestly, no. I wouldn't say that any one team's response has been particularly impressive. The Portland Thorns did part ways with 2 executives who were known for a while now to have been aware of the abuse and have essentially turned a blind eye and given a vote of confidence to Paul Riley as he went from the Portland Thorns to the North Carolina Courage, another team in the league. But, you know, the Portland Thorns owner, Merritt Paulson, was also aware of these allegations, also voiced confidence and support for Paul Riley as he moved on to another team within the league, knowing what he had done within their own franchise. And, you know, as long as he is the person who has the most power in that franchise, I don't think that's good enough, personally. And I think a lot of fans and a lot of players have voiced the same opinion. Becky Sauerbrunn, the player you just played a soundbite from, voiced the same thing during her recent interviews. Yeah. And I think that's true across the board, right? I think in Louisville with Christy Holly and with Rory James in Chicago with the Red Stars, there were people in positions of power who knew and are still in positions of power within those franchises. And none of the 3 have gone as far as to weed out every single person who knew. And until that happens, I don't think players will be satisfied, nor will fans.
A lot of work ahead for the NWSL. Meredith Cash, Business Insider, and Mollie Cahillane of Adweek, thank you so much for your time.